The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a sound like thunder. Ji-won walked through them with steady steps, her military boots clicking against the polished floor. Behind her came Hyun, her old friend from the war days, and Sarah, a young diplomat who looked nervous about everything. The chamber was enormous. It could hold thousands of beings from across the galaxy. Today it was packed. Representatives from dozens of alien species filled the seats, their eyes watching the humans enter. Some looked curious. Others looked doubtful. A few looked like they wanted to laugh. Ji-won had seen worse reactions. She kept her face calm and her posture straight. She wore her formal uniform, the one with the medals from the frontier wars. Those wars had been brutal. Humanity had fought machines that never slept, never stopped, and never showed mercy. The humans had won, but barely. The council leader, a tall being with blue skin and forearms, gestured toward the human delegation. "Please take your seats. We have much to discuss today." Ji-won sat down. Sarah fumbled with her data pad, while Hyun scanned the room with the careful eyes of a soldier. He leaned close to Ji-won and whispered, "She's here." Ji-won didn't need to ask who. Queen Valera of the Talvran Empire had arrived. The queen entered from the opposite side of the chamber. She was tall, easily 7 feet, with dark purple skin and eyes that glowed like hot coals. She wore armor that looked like it was made from black metal and bones. Behind her marched 20 warriors, each one bigger and more intimidating than the last. Queen Valera didn't walk to her seat. She strode to it like she owned the entire room. Maybe she thought she did. Her empire controlled 17 systems. She had conquered them all through war. Her military was feared across half the galaxy. The council leader cleared his throat. "We are gathered today to discuss the territorial disputes along the Outer Rim. Several neutral worlds have reported Talvran ships in their space." Queen Valera waved one hand dismissively. "Those worlds were undefended, unclaimed. My empire simply filled the vacuum." "They were neutral territories protected by council law," another representative said. Valera laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "Council law. What enforcement does this council have? Words, promises?" She looked around the chamber with contempt. "Law only matters when someone has the strength to back it up." The council leader tried to restore order. "Queen Valera, we must resolve this through diplomatic channels. War benefits no one. War benefits the strong," Valera said. She turned her glowing eyes toward the human delegation. "And speaking of the weak, I see we have new members. The humans." Ji-won met her gaze without flinching. Valera smiled, showing teeth that were too sharp. "I have read about humans," Valera continued. "Soft skin, fragile bones, short lifespans. Your military records claim impressive victories, but I suspect those reports are exaggerated. Propaganda to make yourself seem more important than you are." Sarah started to stand, but Hyun put a hand on her shoulder, keeping her seated. Ji-won remained quiet, letting the queen talk. "My warriors train from birth," Valera said. "They fight in real combat before they reach maturity. They have conquered worlds and crushed armies. What have humans done? Won a war against machines?" She laughed again. "Machines do not bleed. They do not feel fear. Fighting machines is nothing like fighting real warriors." The chamber had gone silent. Everyone was watching to see how the humans would respond. Ji-won stood slowly. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Queen Valera, you're right about one thing. Machines don't feel fear. They don't get tired. They don't make mistakes based on emotion. Fighting them taught us to be precise, to be patient, to never give up no matter how bad things looked." Valera tilted her head, studying Ji-won like a predator studying prey. Pretty words from a pretty diplomat. But words won't hold territory. Words won't win wars. "I'm not just a diplomat," Ji-won said quietly. "I'm a soldier. I fought in the frontier wars for 8 years. 8 years against machines," Valera said. "I have fought living warriors for 20 years. There is no comparison." The council leader tried to intervene. "Perhaps we should return to the matter of the territorial disputes." But Valera wasn't finished. She stepped down from her platform and walked toward the human delegation. Her guards moved with her, hands on their weapons. She stopped a few feet from Ji-won. "I propose a solution," Valera said loudly, addressing the entire chamber. "If the humans believe they are true warriors, let them prove it. A demonstration. My champion against their best fighter. When my warrior wins, as he will, The humans will acknowledge that they are not fit to challenge the Talvran Empire. They will support my claim to the disputed territories. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Several representatives tried to speak at once. Jiwon looked at Hyun. He shook his head slightly, warning her. Sarah looked terrified. But Jiwon had not survived 8 years of war by backing down from bullies. And if your champion loses? Jiwon asked. Valera's smile widened. He won't. But if by some miracle he did, I would withdraw my claim to the disputed territories and recognize human sovereignty over them. The council leader looked uncomfortable. This is highly irregular. We do not resolve disputes through combat. Why not? Valera challenged. It's faster than years of negotiation. It's honest. The strong win, the weak lose. That is the way of the universe. Jiwon thought about it. She thought about the territories at stake. She thought about what it would mean if humanity backed down now, at their first real test in the galactic community. She thought about all the soldiers who had died in the frontier wars so that humanity could have a future among the stars. I accept, Jiwon said. Sarah gasped. Hyun closed his eyes briefly. The chamber exploded with noise. Valera looked genuinely pleased. Excellent. My champion is Krax. He has fought in 17 exhibition matches. He has won all 17. 3 of his opponents died from their injuries. The rest wished they had. She turned to address the council. We will hold the match in 3 days in the Grand Arena. All representatives are invited to watch. It will be educational. As Valera walked away with her guards, Hyun leaned close to Jiwon. Do you know what you just agreed to? I know exactly what I agreed to, Jiwon said. I agreed to show the galaxy that humans don't back down. Krax is a killer, Hyun said. I've seen footage of his fights. He's faster and stronger than any human. Probably, Jiwon agreed. But strength isn't everything. We learned that in the wars. Sarah looked like she might cry. What if you lose? What if you die? Jiwon put a hand on the young diplomat's shoulder. Then you make sure my death means something. You make sure humanity keeps moving forward. As they left the chamber, Jiwon could feel eyes on her from every direction. Some looked sympathetic. Most looked like they were already planning her funeral. Queen Valera stood with her warriors, watching the humans leave with an expression of amusement. The queen had never seen a human fight before. She was about to get an education of her own. The human quarters on Axiom Prime were small but comfortable. Jiwon sat in the training room watching footage of Krax on a large screen. The Talvran champion moved like a force of nature. In one video, he picked up an opponent twice his size and threw him across the arena. In another, he moved so fast that the camera could barely track him. Hyun stood beside her, arms crossed. He's won 17 matches. Never even been knocked down. I can see that, Jiwon said quietly. The door opened and Doyeon walked in. He was the military attaché, which meant he gathered intelligence. He carried a datapad full of information. I've been studying Talvran fighting techniques. It's not good news. Tell me anyway, Jiwon said. Doyeon pulled up more footage. Talvran physiology gives them natural advantages. Denser muscle tissue, faster reflexes, thicker skin that's harder to damage. They train from childhood in hand-to-hand combat. Their entire culture revolves around strength and dominance. What are their weaknesses? Jiwon asked. That's the problem, Doyeon said. They don't really have obvious ones. Their fighting style relies on overwhelming force and intimidation. They expect their opponents to break quickly. Most do. Jiwon rewound the footage and watched Krax fight again. What happens when opponents don't break? Doyeon thought about it. I'm not sure. It hasn't really happened before. Krax usually ends fights in the first few minutes. Hyun pulled up a chair and sat backward on it, resting his arms on the back. You remember the factory complex on Titan Station? Jiwon smiled slightly. Which time? The time we held off the automated assault for 3 days straight, Hyun said. No sleep, no reinforcements. Just us and whatever weapons we could find. I remember being so tired I could barely stand, Jiwon said. But the machines never got tired. They just kept coming, and we kept fighting, Hyun finished. Because that's what we do. We don't give up, Doyeon looked between them. You think you can outlast Krax? Maybe, Jiwon said. If I can survive the initial assault, if I can make it into a long fight. Talvran tactics focus on quick dominance. They're not built for extended combat. Hyun nodded slowly. It's a strategy. Not a great one, but it's something. For the next 2 days, Jiwon trained. She didn't try to get stronger or faster. She knew she couldn't match cracks in those areas. Instead, she focused on endurance, on reading movements, on using the environment. She practiced falling and getting back up. She practiced taking hits and staying conscious. She practiced ignoring pain. Sarah visited the training room several times. She always looked worried. "You don't have to do this," she said. "We could tell the council that Valira's challenge was inappropriate. We could negotiate." "Valira would love that," Jiwan said, not stopping her exercises. "She'd tell everyone that humans talk big but run away when challenged. It would undermine everything we're trying to build here." "Better that than you getting killed," Sarah said softly. Jiwan stopped and looked at the young diplomat. "Sarah, I've been fighting since I was 20 years old. I'm 32 now. I've seen friends die. I've nearly died myself more times than I can count. This isn't about me. It's about humanity having a place in the galaxy." "That's too much pressure for one person," Sarah said. "Maybe," Jiwan admitted, "but someone has to carry it." On the evening before the match, Jiwan was running through combat scenarios when the door chimed. He unchecked the security feed. "You're not going to believe this." Queen Valira stood outside with 2 guards. Jiwan gestured for Hyun to open the door. Valira had to duck slightly to enter the room. She looked around with mild interest, taking in the simple furnishings and training equipment. "Human accommodations are sparse," Valira observed. "We don't need much," Jiwan said. "What can I do for you, Queen Valira?" "I came to see the warrior who accepted my challenge," Valira said. She walked around Jiwan slowly, studying her like a specimen. "You are smaller than I expected, weaker. How much do you weigh?" "Perhaps 100 of your pounds." "Close enough," Jiwan said. "Krax weighs 400 pounds, Valera said. "He is 8 feet tall. He has been training since he was 5 years old. He has killed opponents in the arena, even when it was not required." "Are you trying to intimidate me?" Jiwan asked calmly. Valera smiled. "I am trying to give you a chance to withdraw. It would be disappointing if tomorrow's exhibition ends too quickly. Perhaps you could claim illness. Save yourself the embarrassment of defeat." Jiwan met Valera's glowing eyes directly. "I won't withdraw. Why not?" Valera seemed genuinely curious. "You must know you cannot win. The match is a formality. Why go through with it?" "Because humanity doesn't quit," Jiwan said simply. "We've faced impossible odds before. During the Frontier Wars, we fought enemies that couldn't be intimidated, couldn't be negotiated with, couldn't be stopped through normal means. We won because we refused to surrender." Valira tilted her head. "Fighting machines is not the same as fighting warriors." "You keep saying that," Jiwan said. "But you're wrong. Fighting machines taught us that winning isn't about being the strongest or the fastest. It's about adapting, about surviving, about standing up one more time than you get knocked down." "Pretty philosophy," Valira said. "It will not save you tomorrow." "Maybe not," Jiwan agreed. "But I'm going to make Krax work for his victory. I'm going to show you that humans are tougher than you think." Valira studied her for a long moment. "You believe what you are saying. You truly think you have a chance." "I think everyone has a chance until they stop fighting," Jiwan said. Valira's expression was unreadable. "We shall see. Tomorrow will be educational for everyone." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "For what it is worth, I respect warriors who face their fate with courage. Even doomed ones." After Valira left, Hyun let out a breath. "She was trying to get in your head." "I know," Jiwan said. "Did it work?" Hyun looked at his old friend. "What do you think?" Jiwan smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I think I'm terrified. But I'm going to do it anyway." That night, Jiwan couldn't sleep. She lay in her bunk staring at the ceiling. She thought about all the battles she had survived. She thought about the friends who hadn't made it home. She thought about what it meant to represent an entire species. Around midnight, she got up and wrote messages to her family back on Earth. Just in case. She told them she was proud to be human. She told them that whatever happened, humanity would endure. They always had. As dawn broke over Axiom Prime, Jiwan dressed in her combat gear. She checked her equipment methodically. Hyun and Sarah met her at the door. "Ready?" Hyun asked. "No," Jiwan said honestly. "But let's go anyway." The walk to the grand arena took 20 minutes. With every step, Jiwan could feel the weight of what was coming. But she kept walking. That was the human way. When you were scared, when the odds were against you, when everything looked hopeless, you kept moving forward. The arena loomed ahead, massive and ancient. Inside, Thousands of aliens were gathering to watch a human fight for her species' honor. Most of them expected her to lose. Some expected her to die. Jiwan took a deep breath and walked toward the entrance. She had faced death before. She had faced impossible odds before. She would face them again today, because that was what humans did. They fought even when fighting seemed pointless. They endured even when endurance seemed impossible. Queen Valera was about to learn that lesson the hard way. Jiwan tried to stand, but her legs finally gave out. She collapsed onto the sand, barely conscious. The last thing she heard before darkness took her was the roar of the crowd and Minsu's voice screaming her name. She woke up 3 hours later in the medical center. Her body was wrapped in regenerative bandages. Machines hummed around her, repairing the damage. Everything still hurt, but it was a distant, manageable pain now. The advanced alien medical technology was impressive. Yun sat in a chair beside her bed. When her eyes opened, he smiled. "Welcome back." "Did I win?" Jiwan asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. "You won," Yun confirmed. "You crazy, stubborn, magnificent idiot. You actually won." Jiwan closed her eyes for a moment, letting the relief wash over her. Then a thought occurred to her. "Cracks? He's fine. In better shape than you, actually. Talvran physiology helps them recover faster. He was walking around an hour ago." Hyun leaned forward. "He asked to see you when you woke up." "Let him in," Jiwan said. Hyun hesitated, then nodded and left the room. A few minutes later, Cracks entered. He had to duck to fit through the door. He was bandaged in several places, and he moved carefully, favoring his damaged knee. But he was upright and conscious. He stood at the foot of her bed looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I have fought 17 matches," Cracks said quietly. "I have never lost. Today, I learned what losing feels like." He paused. "I also learned what real warriors look like." "You're a real warrior," Jiwan said. "You're strong, fast, skilled." "Strength is not enough," Cracks said. "Speed is not enough. Skill is not enough. You taught me that today. You taught everyone watching." He bowed his head, a gesture of deep respect in Talvran culture. "I request permission to train with human warriors, to learn your methods." Jiwan was too tired to hide her surprise. "You want to train with us?" "I want to understand," Cracks said. "How does a warrior keep fighting when their body is broken? How does someone stand up 9 times after being knocked down 8 times? These are things my training never taught me." "We can probably arrange something," Jiwan said, "after I heal." Cracks bowed again and left. Hyun returned, shaking his head in amazement. "The most dangerous warrior in the Talvran Empire wants to learn from us. Never thought I'd see that day." Over the next few hours, more visitors came. Sarah brought news that the Galactic Council had officially recognized humanity's claim to the disputed territories. Several other species had approached the human delegation with offers of trade and alliance. The arena fight had changed everything. "You're famous," Sarah said, trying not to sound too excited. "Every news service in the galaxy is covering the match. They're calling you the human who would not fall." "I fell plenty of times," Jiwan pointed out. "But you got back up," Sarah said. "Every single time. That's what they're talking about." That evening, Queen Valera came to the medical center. Her guards waited outside. She entered alone, looking at Jiwan with an expression that was hard to interpret. "I was wrong about humans," Valera said. "No greeting, no preamble, just straight to the point." "Yes, you were," Jiwan said. Valera actually smiled at that. "I have conquered 17 species. I have fought in hundreds of battles. I have never encountered warriors like humans before." "We're not the strongest species," Jiwan said. "Not the fastest, not the most advanced. We're just stubborn." "It is more than stubbornness," Valera said. She pulled a chair over and sat down, an informal gesture that her guards would have been shocked to see. "I have been thinking about your words in the council chamber, about fighting machines, about learning to adapt and endure." "And?" "My empire is vast," Valera said, "but it is beginning to fracture. Rebellions in 3 systems, unrest in 5 more. I have always ruled through strength, through the threat of overwhelming force. But strength alone is no longer enough. She looked directly at Jiwon. I need to learn different approaches, different strategies. You want humanity's help? Jiwon asked carefully. I want humanity's perspective, Valira corrected. You have something my empire lacks. The ability to adapt, to endure, to keep fighting even when victory seems impossible. These are not skills that can be conquered. They must be learned. Jiwon thought about it. This was a delicate moment. Queen Valira was offering something that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. An alliance between humanity and the Talvran Empire would be formidable, but it could also be dangerous. I can't make that decision alone, Jiwon said. I'm just a soldier. You are more than a soldier, Valira said. You are a symbol. Today you showed the galaxy what humanity represents: resilience, determination, the refusal to surrender. She stood up. I will make a formal proposal to your government, but I wanted you to know first. You earned that. After Valira left, Jiwon lay back and stared at the ceiling. Her body was healing, but her mind was racing. Everything had changed in the space of a few hours. Humanity had gone from being the newest, weakest member of the Galactic Council to being courted by one of its most powerful empires. Doyen visited that evening, bringing news from Earth. You're all over the news back home. The government is calling you a hero. There's talk of medals, promotions, the whole thing. I just did my job, Jiwon said. Your job was to represent humanity, Doyen said. You did that better than anyone could have hoped. You showed them who we are. A week later, Jiwon was well enough to attend the formal Galactic Council session. The disputed territories were officially transferred to human control. Queen Valira, in front of the entire council, withdrew all Talvran claims and publicly acknowledged humanity as a worthy species. But the real changes were happening quietly, behind the scenes. Krax had already begun preliminary discussions about exchange programs between human and Talvran military forces. Several other species had approached humanity about trade agreements and cultural exchanges. The arena fight had opened doors that might have taken decades to open otherwise. Yunji, the senior human diplomat, pulled Jiwon aside after the session. You did something incredible. You know that, right? I just didn't want to lose, Jiwon said. You did more than not lose, Yunji said. You changed how the galaxy sees us. We're not just another species anymore. We're partners, allies, equals. She paused. What you did in that arena will echo for generations. That night, Jiwon stood on a balcony overlooking Axiom Prime's cityscape. Hyun found her there as she knew he would. Thinking deep thoughts, he asked. Thinking about how one fight changed everything, Jiwon said. About how close we came to losing. If Krax had been just a little faster. If I had been just a little weaker. But you weren't, Hyun said. And he wasn't. And here we are. Here we are, Jiwon agreed. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the city lights. Finally, Hyun spoke again. You know what the real victory was? It wasn't beating Krax. It was showing them what humanity is really about. What's that? Jiwon asked. That we don't quit, Hyun said simply. No matter how bad things get, no matter how impossible it seems, we stand up one more time than we get knocked down. That's who we are. That's what makes us human. Jiwon smiled. That's what makes us dangerous. Yeah, Hyun agreed. That too. Back on Earth, the story of the arena fight was spreading. Children heard about the human who fought an alien champion and refused to stay down. Politicians debated what the victory meant for humanity's place in the galaxy. Military academies studied the tactics, trying to understand how an outmatched fighter had won against impossible odds. But the truth was simpler than all of that. Jiwon had won because she was human. Because humans had spent their entire history fighting against impossible odds and finding ways to survive. Because when evolution hadn't given them claws or fangs or thick hides, they had learned to be clever, to be persistent, to be stubborn. They had learned to stand up no matter how many times they fell. Queen Valera understood that now. So did Krax. So did everyone who had watched the fight. They had seen a human warrior at her absolute limit, broken and bleeding, get up one more time. And they had understood, perhaps for the first time, why humanity was going to be a force in the galaxy. Not because they were the strongest. Not because they were the fastest. Not because they had the best technology, but because they never, ever gave up. Jiwon looked out at the stars and thought about all the humans who would come after her. The explorers and diplomats and traders and warriors. They would face their own challenges, their own impossible odds. But she had shown them something important. She had shown them that humans could compete with anyone, could earn respect from anyone, could stand as equals with any species in the galaxy. All they had to do was keep fighting, keep adapting, keep refusing to surrender. It was the human way, and the galaxy was about to learn just how dangerous that could be. The grand arena of Axiom Prime had stood for 3,000 years. It had seen battles between every kind of warrior the galaxy had to offer. Today it would see something new. Today, it would see a human fight. Jiwon stood in the preparation chamber beneath the arena floor. She could hear the crowd above, thousands of voices creating a rumble like distant thunder. Minsu, the human medic, checked her equipment one last time. "Your vitals are elevated," Minsu said, looking at his scanner. "Heart rate is high." "I'm about to fight someone who could kill me," Jiwon said. "Of course my heart rate is high." Minsu didn't smile. "If things go wrong, if you're injured too badly, I'm stopping the match. I don't care what the rules say." "You'll do no such thing," Jiwon said firmly. "If I fall, you let me get back up." "That's an order." "Jiwon, I mean it, Minsu. This is bigger than me." The door opened and Hyun entered. "It's time," Jiwon nodded. She rolled her shoulders, loosening tight muscles. She had slept poorly and eaten little. Her body felt both too light and too heavy, but her mind was clear. She had been here before. In that moment before battle where fear and focus merged into something sharp and cold. "Remember the plan," Hyun said. "Don't engage directly at first. Make him come to you. Tire him out." "I remember," Jiwon said. "And Jiwon?" Hyun gripped her shoulder. "Come back alive." The gates began to open. Light flooded in from the arena. Jiwon walked forward into it. The arena was enormous. The floor was covered in sand, but there were also rock formations, metal structures, and platforms at different heights. It was designed to test warriors in varied terrain. The stands were packed with spectators from dozens of species. Their faces were a blur of colors and shapes. The crowd's noise hit her like a physical force. Most of them were jeering. Some were laughing. They thought this was going to be a quick, brutal lesson, a demonstration of human weakness. Jiwon walked to the center of the arena. She kept her breathing steady. She ignored the crowd. She focused on the space, on the terrain, on the possibilities. The opposite gate opened. Krax entered like a walking nightmare. He was 8 feet tall and covered in muscle. His skin was dark purple, almost black, and covered in scars. He wore minimal armor, just enough to meet the rules. He didn't need more. His body was a weapon. The crowd roared its approval. Krax raised his arms and bellowed, a sound that echoed across the arena. He beat his massive fists against his chest. The sound was like drums. Jiwon stood quiet and still, watching him. Above the arena, in a royal box, Queen Valera sat forward in her throne. Her glowing eyes were fixed on the scene below. Around her sat representatives from the Galactic Council and various other species. All eyes were on the arena floor. A holographic referee appeared between the two fighters. The rules are simple. Combat continues until one fighter yields or is rendered unable to continue. Lethal force is forbidden. All other techniques are permitted. Do both fighters understand? Krax grunted his agreement. Jiwon nodded. Then begin. The hologram vanished. For one heartbeat, neither fighter moved. Then Krax charged. He moved impossibly fast for something so large. He crossed the distance in seconds, his fist coming up for a devastating strike. Jiwon threw herself sideways, rolling across the sand. Krax's fist hit the ground where she had been standing. It left a crater. The crowd gasped. Jiwon came up running, putting distance between them. Krax roared and charged again. Jiwon ducked behind a rock formation. Krax smashed through it with one punch, sending stone fragments flying. "Fight me!" Krax bellowed. Stop running. Jiwon didn't answer. She kept moving, using the terrain. Every time cracks closed in, she slipped away. She was faster in short bursts, more agile. But she couldn't keep this up forever. The crowd was booing now. They thought she was being a coward. In her box, Queen Valera was smiling. This was going exactly as she had predicted. But Hyun, watching from the human section, saw something different. Jiwon wasn't just running. She was learning. She was watching how Cracks moved, how he attacked, where his momentum carried him. After 2 minutes of chase, Cracks was breathing harder. He was frustrated. His attacks were becoming wilder, less controlled. He expected opponents to stand and fight. He expected to win quickly through overwhelming force. Jiwon stopped running. She turned to face him, standing in an open area of the arena. Cracks grinned savagely. Finally, fight like a warrior. He charged again, but this time Jiwon didn't dodge completely. She waited until the last moment, then moved slightly to the side. Cracks's fist grazed her shoulder. The impact spun her around and sent pain shooting down her arm. But she used the spin, adding her own momentum, and kicked out. Her boot connected with Cracks's knee. It wasn't enough to hurt him badly, but it was enough to make him stumble slightly, enough to show that she could land hits. The crowd went silent. Cracks recovered quickly and swung again. This time Jiwon blocked with her forearm, reinforced with combat armor. The impact nearly broke her arm, but she deflected the force downward. Then she struck back, fast and precise. 3 quick hits to Cracks's ribs, right where Doyen's intelligence said there was a nerve cluster. Cracks grunted in pain. Real pain. His eyes widened slightly. The crowd was completely silent now. Jiwon backed away before Cracks could retaliate. They circled each other. Both fighters were breathing hard now. Cracks looked at her with new understanding. This human was actually dangerous. You are better than I expected, Cracks said. But it changes nothing. He came at her again, more carefully this time. They exchanged blows. Cracks landed a hit to Jiwon's midsection that drove the air from her lungs and sent her flying backward. She hit the sand hard, rolled, and barely avoided his follow-up strike. Jiwon's vision blurred. She tasted blood. Something might be broken inside. But she pushed herself up. Stay down! Minsu's voice came through her earpiece. Jiwon, your vitals. She tore out the earpiece. She couldn't afford distractions. Cracks was walking toward her now, confident again. He had hurt her badly. He expected her to stay down like every other opponent. They always stayed down after a hit like that. Jiwon stood up. The crowd gasped. Even Cracks looked surprised. Jiwon wiped blood from her mouth. Everything hurt. But pain was old news. Pain was familiar. She had fought through worse during the frontier wars. She moved forward to meet him. They clashed in the center of the arena. Jiwon gave up on pure defense. She traded hits now, accepting damage to deal damage. For every strike Cracks landed, she landed too. His hits were devastating, but hers were precise. She targeted joints, nerve clusters, anything that might slow him down. Cracks's fist caught her across the face. She felt something crack. But she grabbed his arm and used his own momentum to throw him off balance. For the first time in his career, Cracks stumbled to one knee. The arena erupted. Some aliens were cheering now. Others were on their feet in shock. In the royal box, Queen Valera was no longer smiling. She was leaning forward, gripping the railing. Her eyes were wide. Cracks rose quickly, embarrassed and angry. He had never been brought to his knees before. He charged with a roar, all strategy abandoned. Pure rage now. Jiwon met the charge head-on. It was suicide to meet a Talvran charge directly. Everyone knew that. But Jiwon had studied the footage. She knew what was coming. At the last instant, she dropped low and to the side. Cracks's momentum carried him forward. Jiwon swept his legs. All 400 pounds of him crashed to the ground. Before he could rise, Jiwon was on him. She rained down strikes using every ounce of her remaining strength. Most bounced off his thick hide, but some found vulnerable spots. She wasn't trying to knock him out. She was trying to show him that she wouldn't quit. That she would keep coming no matter what. Cracks threw her off with raw strength. She flew 10 feet and hit hard. This time she was slower to get up. Blood ran down her face. Her body screamed for her to stay down. She got up anyway. Cracks was on his feet too, breathing heavily. For the first time there was something in his eyes besides confidence. Something like respect, or maybe fear. They stared at each other across the arena. Both fighters were battered. Both were bleeding. The crowd was going insane. Jiwan took a step forward. Krax watched her come, and for the first time in 17 matches, he wondered if he could lose. The arena had become a furnace. The afternoon sun beat down on the sand, turning the space into an oven. Jiwan's vision swam with heat and pain. Blood dripped from a cut above her eye. Her left arm hung at an odd angle. Something was definitely broken inside her chest. Every breath felt like swallowing fire. She didn't care. She kept moving forward. Krax watched her come with an expression that might have been confusion. In 17 matches, no opponent had ever gotten back up this many times. Most stayed down after the first real hit. Even the strong ones quit after the second or third. But this human kept rising. "Why do you continue?" Krax asked. His own breathing was labored now. "You cannot win. Your body is broken." Jiwan didn't waste breath on words. She attacked instead, fast and low. Her strikes were weaker now, but still precise. She went for his already damaged ribs, for his knees, for the nerve clusters Doyen had identified. Krax blocked most of the hits, but not all. Each successful strike made him grunt. He swung back, a massive overhead blow that would have caved in her skull if it connected. Jiwan rolled under it, came up behind him, and kicked the back of his knee hard. Krax stumbled but caught himself. He turned faster than she expected and backhanded her across the arena. Jiwan flew through the air and crashed into a metal support structure. The impact drove stars across her vision. In the stands, Minsu was on his feet screaming for the match to be stopped. Hyun held him back with one hand. "She won't forgive you if you stop it now." "She's dying." Minsu shouted. "She's winning," Hyun said quietly. Sarah looked at him like he was crazy. "How is this winning?" "Look at her." "Look at Krax," Hyun said. The Talvran champion was bent over, hands on his knees, breathing in great gasps. His ribs were bruised purple. One of his legs was favoring the other. He had taken relatively little damage compared to Jiwan, but he wasn't used to taking any damage at all. More importantly, he wasn't used to fights that lasted this long. Talvran physiology was built for explosive power, fast, overwhelming force that ended fights quickly, but this fight was dragging into its 10th minute. For a Talvran, that was an eternity. Jiwan pushed herself away from the metal structure. Her legs were shaking. She could barely see out of one eye, but she took a step forward. Then another. The crowd had stopped making noise. They were watching in stunned silence. This shouldn't be possible. The human should be unconscious, should be broken, should have quit long ago. In the royal box, Queen Valera stood. Her guards looked nervous. The queen had never stood during a match before. She stared down at the arena, her glowing eyes wide. Beside her, Suman, a council member from a neutral species, spoke quietly. "I have seen many battles in this arena. I have never seen anything like this." "The human should be dead," another representative whispered. "Humans are harder to kill than they look," Suman said. "We are learning that today." Jiwan and Krax circled each other slowly. Both fighters were exhausted. Both were injured. The difference was that Krax had never been exhausted before. He didn't know how to fight through it. All his training had been about quick dominance, not endurance. Jiwan had spent 8 years learning to fight while exhausted, while wounded, while half-dead. The frontier wars had taught her that battles weren't always won by the strongest. Sometimes they were won by whoever could keep fighting the longest. A memory flashed through her mind. 3 days in a factory complex on Titan Station. No sleep, no backup. Just her and Hyun and a dozen others, holding off wave after wave of automated soldiers. Her body had given up after the first day. After that, it was just her will keeping her moving. She had survived then. She would survive now. Krax charged again, but his movements were slower, predictable. Jiwan sidestepped and let him pass. He turned to face her, and she saw something in his eyes she had never seen in the footage of his previous fights. Uncertainty. "You fight like a machine," Krax said between gasps for air. "No fear, no stopping." "I fought machines for 8 years, Jiwan said. Her voice was rough, barely audible. "They taught me well." She attacked before he could respond. Not a careful, measured attack. She threw herself forward with everything she had left. It was reckless, desperate. If Krax caught her, he could end the fight right now. But Krax hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. He was tired. He was hurting. And for the first time in his life, he was uncertain. That hesitation was all Jiwan needed. She ducked under his guard and struck his already damaged ribs with both fists. Crax roared in pain. She didn't stop. She hit him again and again, targeting the same spot. Her own damaged arm screamed in protest, but she ignored it. Crax tried to grab her, but his movements were too slow now. She slipped away, circled around, and kicked his damaged knee. Hard, Crax's leg buckled. He went down on one knee. The arena exploded with sound. Aliens were on their feet, screaming. Some in excitement, some in disbelief. This wasn't supposed to happen. Crax didn't kneel. Crax didn't lose. Jiwan didn't give him time to recover. She moved in fast, striking his head, his neck, his shoulders. None of the hits were powerful enough to knock him out, but that wasn't the point. The point was to show him that she would never stop. That no matter how many times he knocked her down, she would keep coming back. Crax tried to rise, but his damaged leg wouldn't support his full weight. He swung wildly, catching Jiwan across the ribs. She felt something else break inside her. She flew backward, hit the sand, and lay still. The crowd held its breath. Jiwan's body refused to move. Everything was pain. Her mind felt fuzzy, disconnected. She could hear Minsu screaming through the earpiece she had torn out earlier. She could hear the crowd. She could hear Crax struggling to stand. She thought about her family on Earth. She thought about the soldiers who had died in the frontier wars so that humanity could reach the stars. She thought about what it would mean if she stayed down now. Her body said it was impossible to stand up. Jiwan stood up anyway. The crowd's roar was deafening. Even the aliens who had bet against her were cheering now. They had never seen anything like this. They had never seen someone refuse to stay down this many times. Crax had managed to stand as well. He looked at Jiwan with something that might have been awe. "You should be unconscious. You should be broken." "I am broken," Jiwan said. "Doesn't matter." They came at each other one more time. There was no strategy left. No technique. Just two warriors who had nothing left to give, giving everything anyway. They collided in the center of the arena. Jiwan could barely lift her arms. Crax could barely stay on his feet. They exchanged weak, desperate strikes. Then Crax tried his signature move, the Berserker Rush. He gathered his remaining strength and charged forward with everything he had. It was the move that had ended 14 of his 17 victories. Pure, overwhelming force. Jiwan didn't try to dodge. She didn't have the strength left. Instead, she did something that no other fighter had ever tried against Crax. She stepped into the charge. She grabbed his arms, and she used his own momentum against him. It was basic physics. Crax's massive weight moving at speed plus Jiwan's redirection. She fell backward, pulling him forward and down. Crax was moving too fast to stop. His own power betrayed him. He crashed face first into the sand with a sound like thunder, and this time he didn't get up. For a long moment, nothing happened. The arena was completely silent. Nobody could believe what they had just seen. Jiwan was on her knees, breathing in ragged gasps. She could barely see, could barely think. But she was still conscious. She was still upright. Crax lay in the sand, still breathing but completely exhausted. He had burned through all his strength on that final charge. He had nothing left. The holographic referee appeared. It scanned both fighters. Crax is unable to continue.
The human is victorious.
The arena exploded into chaos.